Joining us this week for the Wednesday Bookmark is Ian Henderson. Ian taught continuing and corporate education at Algonquin College for more than 45 years. He also maintained his own training and development company, Ian Henderson and Associates. We're going to talk this morning about Ian's new book. It's called From Rocking Horse to Rocking Chair. The Learning Never Ends. Ian, thanks so much for your time this morning.
Well, it's just a pleasure to be here. Thank you.
This is a book of life lessons, pieces of wisdom, insight, knowledge, or self-awareness adopted to improve oneself, relationships, and life in general. That's how you define life lessons.
That's right. Yeah.
In chapter 1, you hit on things we can learn from our parents. Let's begin there. What's something you learned from your own mom and dad?
Yeah. Well, my dad was a guy, probably my whole life lessons history was my dad he'd find something and he'd say, "Son." Whenever he'd say "son," I knew a lesson was coming. And sometimes he'd say, "I knew a man once who did this," and he'd turned into a story. And one of the stories, my favorite one, was he was in the kitchen one day and he just said, "What am I doing?" And he was banging his head lightly against the wall. And he says, "What am I doing?" I said, "Dad, what are you doing?" He says, "I'm banging my head against the wall." And he says, "Ask me why I'm doing that." And I said, "Why are you doing that?" He says, "Because it feels so good when I stop."
Yeah.
And then he built that into a life lesson that in life, there's going to be things that you're going to have to persevere at, but there's times when maybe it's not going to work. It's time to let it go. So he said, if the horse is dead, get off. But don't stop persevering. But there's a point when you're going to have to understand that not everything's going to go your way.
Mm-hmm.
So that was the first of, maybe, 20, 30, 40 lessons I got from him. And I got lessons from my mom all around about judging people. And my mom was a financial lady. She got me a little bank account when I was young, and I had to put part of my allowance in every week. And pay yourself first before David Chilton came up with the Wealthy Barber. She was teaching that lesson. So I was lucky enough in the parents' draw, I guess. I got some really good lessons along the way.
Yeah, good parents.
My whole life's been, I see lessons are everywhere.
Yeah.
If you look. But
lots of wisdom
we
there.
too fast now.
I love
pay
that.
Attention.
On the flip side of that same equation, things we can learn from kids, and you talk about that as well, are little barefoot philosophers, as it were.
Oh, yeah.
What is it, Ian, about the way that kids see the world that causes them to, at least on occasion, spill out these unexpectedly profound insights?
Yeah, I think with kids, I love kids, and I love the fact that they don't tend to edit necessarily what it is they're going to say.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, so for many adults, I know they have a thought and they just put it out without thinking about it. There's no speed bump between the two. But for kids, they don't need a speed bump; it just comes out. And the philosophy from kids is really great. I was doing a seminar on creative thinking for years at Algonquin, and I tested them out on kids ahead of time to see how they would relate. And I had the tables all set up, and these two kids are looking at my bowl of M&Ms that I have there, and they're saying, "Why do you have M&Ms? Why don't you have Smarties?" It's a course on creative thinking. Why don't you have Smarties in it? I changed it right away, and I go, "How come I didn't see that?" They just don't have any things that stop them from editing and being creative. So a lot of the things I try, and when I'm teaching right brain thinking, I have about 5 kids I can go to, and I give them to them first, and they'll get them every time. So it's wonderful to have that.
You also discuss, surprisingly, things we can learn from our pets, perhaps most especially our dogs and our cats. Touch on a few of those lessons for us.
Well, the dog lesson, of course, is my landlord at the cottage had this beautiful dog named Brandy, and for years, and every time I came up, that dog was always with me. And when I arrived, it was with me for 2 weeks. It would go with me everywhere. It would lie down beside me on the couch. It was just the loyalty and the companionship. And if you ever said anything about it to them, they just forgive you right away, right? And cats, I'm not a cat expert, but I have a friend, Kim, who I call her the cat lady, and she works with me in my work at the Humane Society, where we do grief support there. And she is amazing. So I interviewed her for 4 or 5 interviews just to get a feeling around every one of my topics there. I had to find people that were really knowledgeable in each one of them and do a lot of interviewing. And for her, it was like, cats, no use giving them a name, because if you call them, they may not come. They're their own world. And it's just fascinating. And I love cats and dogs. We have birds in the book, dolphins. I've spent time over in the South Keys, Florida Keys,
Yeah.
with the dolphin lab for years, and it's just a wonderful experience when you're with nature.
Huh.
And nature teaches us all these things, rain and clouds, and
Yeah,
we don't.
and you mentioned other animals because, as you mentioned, you talk about birds as one of them, and I thought that chapter was quite interesting because birds inhabit a world that's a bit mysterious to us.
Yeah.
What does the world that birds inhabit have to teach the rest of us, do you think?
Well, I think right now I'm sitting here and I have a hummingbird feeder beside me that I bring up to this cottage, and that I hang it up, and within 30 seconds I've got 2 weeks of hummingbirds buzzing around, and they're just so peaceful to watch. But when you start to study, like I have a robin that's been in my backyard at home for 6 years in a row, the same robin, because the markings on her are remarkable. And she comes into my backyard and she just nests there, and she has her babies there, and she teaches the babies how to bathe in my big bird bath I have. It's a little ritual that happens every year. And just the fact of the routine, the commitment, the nesting, like how careful they are when they build a nest. And all birds are different. I used to have cedar waxwings come into my backyard, and they'd come in for 2 weeks. And I had a serviceberry tree, and he'd strip the tree bare in 2 weeks. And he'd go, I would never see them again until the next year. They come back on the same day. And I'm going like, wow, what the routine. I'm sure they have lots of flexibility, but to fly that far and come back to the same tree, and I made it a point to never be away from that because it was just such a joy to have them there. And then, of course, unfortunately, I had a big storm which tore the tree down, and haven't had them since.
You dig into the
we learn from water birds too. I have water birds out here, and blue herons, and the peacefulness and the quiet that they bring.
Yeah, I can tell you're a bit of a bird watcher.
Oh yeah. I love birds. Any kind of bird, pretty well.
Yeah,
could do without some grackles once in a while, or some eating all the food from my other birds. But so the deal.
Another thing you do in the book is you dig into the lives of a few historical figures. One of those is Pablo Picasso. What are the big takeaways from Picasso's life, do you think?
I think Picasso more than any, and I only got introduced to him through going to a Christmas show in the Nepean one year, and this lady, Linda Sanderson, was there, and she was a painter, and she'd take things in real life situations, and she'd do like an image of fun. So she did a Picasso dinner party, what it would look like with all the weird people and the dog and the animals. And I started to like Picasso, so I started to study him. And I mean, the guy was amazing. He did his most creative work when he was older. And he was asked many times. He said, it took me about 60 years before I could learn to paint like a child.
Wow.
And that's what happened. He did all the other stuff. He did sculptures. He did pencil sketches. He did everything. But as he aged, he realized there was no barriers. He never had barriers on color. So he painted in the blue stage. And then he went to the red stage. And people said, well, why did you switch from the blue to the red? He said, I ran out of paint. And then he'd go another, and his work was, I mean, thousands and thousands of paintings and things like that. But we're kind of know him for the bizarre stuff. And he was painting when he was 7 years old. His father was a painter. And by the time he got to be 12, his father gave him all the stuff and said, you're better than me. And he just encouraged him to paint the rest of his life. And an interesting man, for sure.
Yeah, very. Okay, last question, Ian. In your final chapter, you pose the following thought experiment. I've got to close with this. Imagine if you could go back in time and give your younger self some wise advice. If you could go back in time and give young Ian some wise advice, what would that advice be?
I probably would have said, don't take everything so seriously. I mean, I got great parenting, and I was brought up, and they were drilling into me, you got to get this, get your straight A's, do this, do that. And when I started teaching at Algonquin, one of the things I learned, straight A's are nice, but don't let it ruin your life. You need to enjoy life too. And I would encourage my students, if you get an A, great, but don't let these things dominate your life to the point where you can't enjoy it. So I do a lot of work now as a grief counselor, as the last of my careers before writing. And I do a lot of grief support work with people, and I'm trying to go back and what was it you always liked to do that you didn't do that you could do now? Because there's all these barriers holding you back, and it's amazing to watch what people do. Everything from tap dancing to picking up instruments. We have 40 people in our ukulele group in Vernon, Ontario, where we play all over hospices, and it's just wonderful stuff. Don't take life too seriously. You'll never get out of it alive, was the quote was in my high school yearbook.
Yeah, so wise. Yeah. Again, the book we've been talking about is From Rocking Horse to Rocking Chair. The Learning Never Ends. Ottawa's own Ian Henderson. I loved your first book. I love this book as well, Ian. Thanks so much for your time this morning.
Brock. Really appreciate the opportunity. So we'll see your book 3 your way when it comes out.
I appreciate it. Thanks, Ian.
Thank you.